We are finally here, college football fans. Week 0 is just 4 days away, and the game to watch this weekend is none other than number 10 Florida State against Georgia Tech out in Dublin. Yes, we have an Ireland game to get us into the new season. FSU has undergone plenty of change this offseason, highlighted by Jordan Travis heading to the NFL. He's replaced by former Clemson and Oregon State quarterback DJU. The Noles also picked up a couple of key Alabama skill position transfers as well to make up for the losses of Trey Benson and Keon Coleman, who also pursued professional endeavors. So now we're bringing in our college football analyst, Michael Calabrese. And Calabrese is more than just a college football analyst. He's an avid college football video game player. So we're going to talk this Florida State-Georgia Tech game, Brees, and you're going to take us through what you did. You simulated the game a handful of times, getting us to an accurate assessment of how this game will go. Florida State, Georgia Tech, 11.5 point spread, total around 55.5. First, tell me why you're qualified for this, and then give me a little bit about this game itself.
Sure. So during the offseason, I published my first book, Legendary Bowl, which took 68 teams, whittled it down to one classic team being crowned the best college football team of all time. And I used NCAA football video game 14. That was the last one in the series before the long stretch of time in which it was in a legal battle. We weren't sure if we were ever going to get the game again. But what that taught me was exactly how to calibrate things in terms of quarter length, in terms of sliders, in terms of the roster manipulation to make sure that it was spitting out realistic simulation results. So the same thing for college football 25. There's a few things that you need to do to be able to calibrate so you get the correct amount of plays, accurate amount of total yardage. So I went through a few simulations, but after about 30 minutes of tinkering, I was ready to just let the system play itself out. So I went through, and really the only major difference in terms of realism, the Ireland's location was not available. So I went to the second best thing, which is to put them in the Fenway Bowl. A lot of Irish folks there in Beantown. So I went through, played out the simulation between Florida State and Georgia Tech, and it spitted out a 30-9 win for the Seminoles, which meant that they covered the 11.5 point spread, depending on where you got in the market, and it comfortably went under that total of 55.5. It was a slow start between the Yellow Jackets and Seminoles. It was 3-3 at the end of the first quarter. The big theme of the entire game was Georgia Tech could just not keep Florida State out of their backfield. The Seminoles ended the game with 10 tackles for loss, 4 sacks by Patrick Payton off the edge. DJU was pretty solid in this game, finishing with 364 yards through the air and 2 total touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 through the air. And finally, the FSU defense really put the screws to the Yellow Jackets in the second half. 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter when there was a chance for a backdoor cover. So that's how it ended up playing out between FSU and Georgia Tech. My feeling was that it was pretty realistic in both teams getting their feet wet in the first 15 minutes, and then really the cream rising to the top on the defensive side of the ball in the second half.
You know, I like that you said DJU too. Before you were trying to tell me how to pronounce his last name. That's a lost cause on my end. But when you look at this game in particular, and you obviously you said seemed pretty realistic with Florida State obviously dominating Georgia Tech. But when you're looking at it from a realistic point of view, actually betting on Saturday when they're putting on the pads, not a video game, what do you see different from this one in particular?
So I think there is value in going over the 55.5. And the other element of it is if Georgia Tech can score in the 20s, this is the kind of defense that you can score on quickly. Georgia Tech gave up at least one play of 40 yards or more in every game last season. I think there's a chance for FSU to break some big ones in this game and push this game over the 55.5.
Yeah, I like that look. I'm intrigued to see Florida State maybe look toward their team total. Obviously, it'll be a lot higher given the fact that they're such staunch favorites, but we're seeing the line already money come in on Florida State, getting that 11 that was originally in the market to starting to trickle up to that 11.5. Wouldn't be surprised to see it get closer to 13 come Saturday. We're finally here. College football's finally back. Maybe third time's the charm for DJU. That's definitely a storyline to consider. Breeze, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you, 4 days away from the season, what are you most excited for when it comes to this college football season in particular?
I think there's 2 elements here. I'm historically, more enamored with the history of college football, keeping things the same. That's obviously been thrown out the window. Everything has changed in college football. Conference realignment has realigned everything within the country, coast to coast. So I want to see these new matchups. This is what we were promised, these heavyweight fights. You have Oregon, Ohio State on October 12th. You have Georgia traveling to the 40 acres to take on Texas. I want to see these new colossal matchups and what it looks like fan bases traveling to new hostile environments. I think there's going to be a lot of juice there. And the second storyline that I want to follow very closely is the Big 12, for my money, is going to be the most exciting, explosive, unpredictable conference in college football. You could make a strong argument that half of the 16 teams have a legit chance to win the conference and the auto bids of the college football playoff. So I want to see what happens in the Big 12 because I think there's an opportunity for some teams to really come from the outside and shock everybody and get to the conference title game. And I think that's a little bit more fun than necessarily the Big 10 and SEC that has 3 to 4 contenders. So just, overall, the race there in the Big 12 and what Yormark has been able to accomplish, building them up, even losing Texas and Oklahoma, they go ahead and add 4 teams from the Pac-12 in the offseason. I think the Big 12 is going to be must-watch TV.
It's funny. I'm the host, so usually I get the doc first. I didn't get to put in what I was most excited for, which was the conference realignment. And I'm not going to go to the college football playoff and the expansion there because I think it's interesting, but we have different thoughts on, or I have different thoughts on that. The one I'm going to go with, and you mentioned it, the SEC has so many top teams, and you mentioned Texas coming over from the Big 12. Perhaps the team that no one's talking about, and are they undervalued, is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Like, Kalen DeBoer comes over. Jalen Milroe took that great junior year step last year. So I'm expecting him to do it again this season, to take another step forward. We saw how good Michael Penix was, how dynamic he was with DeBoer working with him over at Washington. Now he comes to Alabama, and it feels like they're undervalued. You talk about Georgia, everyone's all over them to win. You're talking about Texas, everyone thinks that they're going to make a run. Ole Miss is the darlings of the SEC. Right now, it feels like the time that no one's talking about Alabama. I'm investing in Jalen Milroe stock, the Heisman at 14-1. I'm excited for the undervalued tour that is the Crimson Tide because I think they're going to make a lot of noise this year. I don't know if you feel similar to me, or do you think I'm a little bit crazy for thinking they're undervalued?
You're not crazy because Kalen DeBoer is the head coach. Everywhere he's gone, he's won. Go full Netty on this situation. Just Google him. You're going to find that this guy takes little to no time to get a team up to a championship level. And I think he has all the pieces this year. I, too, am really interested to see if he can unlock that final element in Milroe's passing game in the same way he did with Penix. Because if he plays at that level, when you add in his athleticism and what he's able to do as a dual threat, you have a Heisman caliber quarterback. And if you do, you got a chance to win the national championship.
Exactly. I think that if he's able to take that step forward, which we saw the glimpses of potential last season, if he's able to do it this year with DeBoer, that's unlocked. There's no doubt in my mind that he has a seat in New York come the Heisman ceremony. But Mike Calabrese, enjoy the college football. We're finally back. Have a great day, brother.
Appreciate it, Charlie.